Learning to code is the single greatest thing you can do to invest in yourself. The single skill can more than double your value in the job market and equip you to do some truly remarkable things. If I could go back in time, this is exactly how I would go about learning to code. Hi, my name is Yash, and in 2 years, I went from not knowing what compressing a folder means to having all the skills that a software engineer needs to becoming a researcher that relies heavily on coding to becoming an instructor at a Caltech coding workshop. I never went for a degree in computer science, I never went to any coding boot camp, never purchased a single course, and I didn't even have computers in high school. So I think I have something important to say on this topic. So I'll break this video into steps that you can follow even if you've never used a computer in your life. And if you're more of an intermediate, then feel free to skip the first couple of steps. Step 1, getting the right equipment. I'm not a believer in spending thousands of dollars in courses or boot camps for learning skills like coding. But there are a few essentials that you absolutely need. First, get a reliable source of internet. Now, it does not have to be high speed, but it should be good enough to render YouTube videos, for example. And if you're watching this video, I think you already meet that requirement. Next, get a laptop. Yes, you can learn to code on your tablet or on your phone, or you can travel to a cyber cafe every day, but honestly, these steps are extremely dreadful to follow through with every single day. Now, learning to code isn't exactly easy, as you might know. So you want to minimize the points of frictions as much as you can. You can get a cheap second-hand laptop for just a couple $100s. You don't need anything fancy. If you know nothing about laptops, then I would recommend getting one with a processor better than an i3, a screen size greater than 12 inches, a RAM of greater than 4GB, and storage of more than 64GB. You don't need to know what any of what I just said means. You just have to follow what I said and you'll be fine. But if you're still confused, I'll put some recommendations in the description below. And that's it. You don't need to pay a single penny after this till you pay for your cab ride to your first job interview, except the internet bill. Step 2. Get into a coding mindset. Coders think differently, and I could not stress this enough. If there's one thing you take away from this video, it has to be this. Every coder uses Google all the time, and you need to learn that first. You need to understand that there's just so many people in the world that whatever problem you're facing, somebody in the world has faced that, solved it, and documented it on the internet. So the first thing to do whenever you find yourself stuck in a situation is to believe that there's a solution. And it's only a matter of finding it. The next step is to figure out how to ask Google to solve it. Good programmers are great at using Google. They know the right questions to ask. And this comes with practice. You need to keep Googling and scrolling. Remember, imposter syndrome is extremely common in coding circles. It is that feeling when you feel like your peers are more knowledgeable, smarter, and more experienced than you, and that you don't deserve to be with them. But remember, no matter how smart you think they are, they have the same thoughts as you do. The only power you need as a programmer is the belief that every problem has a solution and the grit to keep looking for it till you find it. Step 3. Get familiar with your computer. I got my first laptop when I was 19 and I had no idea how to use the thing. Now, learning to code without knowing how to use a laptop is like learning to run without learning to walk. It makes no sense. Learn how to start a laptop. Learn to connect it to the internet and use it. Learn to make files and folders and learn to move them around. Now, try watching YouTube on your laptop instead of your phone. Try sending some emails with attachments. Try downloading some movies. Maybe even try writing some poetry on a text editor like Microsoft Word. All of these might seem trivial to many, but I had never owned a laptop and I know how intimidating it can be. I did not own a laptop, so I did not know how to do many of these things. The thing is, we all start somewhere and it's completely okay to be totally inept at the beginning. Now, the good news is there'll be a lot of people around you who will know how to do all of the things that I just said quite well. So be shameless and ask them for help. But I'd suggest try Google first. Step 4, learn to code. So this is where all of the YouTube videos begin. But trust me, you don't want to skip the previous steps. And if you're here after doing all of those steps, congratulations. The next thing for you to do is to learn one coding language in depth. Now, it doesn't matter what some university courses say, but there are only 2 right answers for the first coding language you should learn. It's either Python or JavaScript. Now, it doesn't really matter which one you choose because once you're sufficiently advanced, you'll be able to code in either one without any problems. But this step needs to be as comprehensive and simple as possible while having a lot of functionality and support. By the way, I'm a total Python fanboy, so you better pick that. I'm just kidding. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. Find any 2 to 4 hour tutorial on YouTube and follow along religiously. With every keystroke, you should know what that letter does. You want your foundation to be as strong as possible. Now, most YouTube tutorials for these languages are great, but if I had to recommend one, I would suggest sticking with the free code camp tutorial that I'll provide the link to in the description. Learn about print statements, variables and data types, if-else statements and or not, lists and dictionaries, for loops and while loops, functions, comments, reading and writing in files, classes and object-oriented programming, only basics, and importing and exporting modules. Step 5. Create a personal project. This is where all you've learned so far will be put to the test. Now, it might seem too soon to take up such a big challenge, but trust me, this is how you learn at the fastest pace possible. I personally recommend signing up to a beginner hackathon. This will give you a taste of coding in the real world with an actual goal in mind. You'll be able to apply your coding and Googling skills in real time, and you'll be able to take help from the team that you work with. Remember, it's extremely important to be willing to communicate and ask your teammates for help if you need it. Now, in preparation for the hackathon and during the hackathon itself, you'll come across a lot of modules you've never seen before and you'll learn to use them. You'll be able to read documentation, and depending on the hackathon, you'll also learn to test your code. These are things you can only learn if you get your hands dirty, and most of these things will be applicable to any job that you take up. Even if you don't end up going for the hackathon, I suggest you pick a hackathon problem as the basis of your project. These problems are usually well thought out and you'll be able to see other people's solutions after you're done trying it yourself. Step 6. Fill in the gaps. This is where you learn all of the computer skills every developer needs. Learn Git and GitHub and host your projects on it. You want to know what words like clone, commit, push, pull, rebase, merge, and fork mean and what they do as commands and when and how to use them. Next, learn to use the terminal for your day-to-day tasks. Now, it may seem redundant at first, but it's gonna help you a ton in every single project you do. Also, if you're on Windows, instead of using command line, I would highly recommend you switch to the Bash subsystem for Linux. A very good way to practice these is to just stop using your mouse until absolutely necessary. Also, if you've not been using a code editor so far, what have you been doing? But also, now is a good time to get familiar with it. Now, I love PyCharm for Python and I love other JetBrains IDEs, but if I had to recommend only one editor for every single purpose, the best one hands down is VS Code. So download it and start getting comfortable with it as quickly as you can, maybe even before you learn your first language. At this point, you'll start to understand the landscape of coding and you'll come to know of things you don't know of. Feel free to explore by yourself. Learn scripting or SQL or basically anything that you come across or might need in a project and haven't gotten around learning it so far. Even though many people recommend you to do it sooner, I would say now is a good time to watch the famous CS50 Harvard course that you can find for free. It's a great course to truly get into the head of a programmer and have a look at all of the possibilities in coding. Remember, programming requires lifelong learning, and by now you have all the skills to be able to do just that. Step 7. Decide a direction. There's just so much you can learn with programming and so much you can do that it's just impossible to learn everything in one lifetime. But by now you have a good idea of what all is possible with coding, so you have the freedom to be able to dig deeper into what you enjoy the most. If you want to get into machine learning or data science, look up tutorials for that. You'll be surprised at the amount of free structured content available. Just pick a course or two and follow along. You learn Python modules like NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, and some tools like Jupyter Notebooks, for example. Then, depending on how deep you wish to go, you'll learn tools like TensorFlow or the language R and so on. One website you definitely need to look at is Kaggle. Also, if you want to go down this route, you'll need to brush up on your linear algebra and statistics, or just learn it if you've never learned it in high school. On the other hand, if you're more into app development or web development, look up tutorials for that. Learn HTML, CSS, and some database tool like MongoDB or Postgres. Build full stack CRUD projects. Full stack meaning having a front end to interact with the users, having a back end to interact with servers, and having a database to store some data. And CRUD projects means apps that have functionality like create, read, edit, and delete. Now, if you're sticking with Python, Flask or Django are great tools and they basically give you limitless possibilities. But typically JavaScript tools are much easier to use for you to be able to do the same things. In this case, I would recommend using the MERN stack, MERN. Google to know what it means. There are also routes other than machine learning and web development that you can take after doing the first 6 steps. So keep looking and expanding your possibilities. Congratulations! After all of this, you're well on your way to becoming a professional without ever attending school in computer science. Remember, it doesn't matter what step you're on, you can always apply for jobs to accelerate your learning and your industry experience. However, keep in mind that if you don't have recommendations, which you probably won't. You need to have a lot of projects under your belt to be able to land an interview. And the skills you need to crack an interview are very different from what we've discussed so far. So it's important to separately prepare for your interviews by learning data structures like stacks, heaps, trees, graphs, etc., and algorithms like sorting, depth first and breadth first searches, recursion, and so on. I'd recommend looking at a website like LeetCode to prepare. Remember, it's always the journey, not the destination. The great thing about programming is it's the right amount of challenging, and you can always find people online who will be willing to help you no matter what stage of learning you're on. I'm proud of you for being motivated enough to watch the entire video, and I wish you the very best for doing whatever you want to do through coding.